Who are the ruling elites and how do they control the world? Hello everyone, I'm Bobtheorc and welcome to Don't Be Someone Else's Bitch. But first, our disclaimer. This show is entirely a work of fiction and is for entertainment purposes only. Any resemblance to real-world people and events is purely coincidental, because I don't want to end up dead in my car like a Boeing whistleblower on his way to explain why parts keep falling off of airplanes. That's right. So, today we are going to dedicate our video to Ed Latimore, who I follow on Twitter, and he's an amazing follow. I suggest everybody should follow him, because he's always full of all kinds of just common sense wisdom. And Ed posted, "People forget how much of an advantage you have by just not being poor. I'm not saying it's impossible to overcome, but survival gives you surprisingly little time to excel." And that is very true. And I responded, this is why the ruling elites want to keep us poor, because we cause them less trouble if we're just too busy to try to pay the bills. And Ed asked me, well, who are the ruling elites? And I said, well, you know, in my experience, these people, there's a combination of wealth and political connections give them a disproportionate influence over decisions and events. And these people include tech billionaires, investment bankers, and also, key advisors who operate behind the scenes. And over the course of the conversation, I decided to record a video to get into more detail about what I'm talking about, because it's really hard to explain it all in just the limitations of Twitter thread. Now, I've got a couple rules that I'm going to follow. And first off, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus that I know. I've got friends who work for people, and I find out things. My background is that my mom was an international opera singer. She sang all over the world. My dad worked for the Federal Reserve Bank. I went to a fancy private school, thanks to a variety of reasons, which I don't really want to get into right now. But, I was kind of the smart kid, and I knew how to read, and, we got in. A lot of it was luck, and sometimes a lot of success in life is just luck and being in the right place at the right time. And as a result, and then also as an adult traveling the world and interacting with people, just sort of boldly going forth, I suppose you could say, I've interacted in a lot of interesting situations and met a number of interesting people. So I'm going to convey sort of 4 basic ideas, and this will be the start of perhaps a video series where I'll talk to some of my friends and recount stories, anecdotes, and we'll see if we can uncover who are the ruling elites. Now, first off, I want to start by saying that there is a modern aristocracy. We have an illusion of choice, an illusion of democracy, but we're not really that much more sophisticated than sort of a modern feudal system in many ways. Throughout pretty much all of human civilization, you've had people with power and connections and money who run things, and then you've got their underlings who kind of hold everything together, and then you've got us common folk. And this modern aristocracy could be considered some of the old money. You have various oligarchs, billionaires, things like that. And we'll get into some details here in a minute. You also have what I call the gatekeepers, who enforce the 2 sets of rules. And these would be like your politicians and your bureaucrats, and who are largely responsible to the donor class. You could consider these to be kind of like your modern knights, essentially, minor nobility. They report to their lords and masters, and they form sort of a protective class where they don't have to necessarily suffer the consequences of their actions because they're protected, but they're only protected because they're essentially the bitch of the people that they work for, and the moment they're no longer useful, they get tossed. And I'll give some examples here in a minute. Then you also have instances where the elites tend to stand together on important things, and they'll fight over the stuff that are maybe personal interests, but they very seldom throw each other completely under the bus. They'll have competing interests, this is true, But one thing that they all have in common is that they want to be the people making the decisions in the world, and they don't want the common people to have a lot of influence unless they are working for and benefiting the elites. And then finally, I want to talk about wedge issues and how the elites keep us fighting with each other over issues that are not important to them. Maybe they're important to us, but they're not important to them. And if we're fighting over these scraps, fighting over the wedge issues, we're too busy to notice that we're all getting screwed by the same people. So, some specific examples. Everybody knows the common boogeymen, Bill Gates and George Soros and the Koch brothers and all that stuff. In my conversation with Ed, I mentioned Larry Fink, who controls the largest investment fund in the world, and he's behind a lot of, or that money is behind a lot of major rebuilding efforts, major investment efforts. So, for example, Ukraine's getting destroyed thanks to, let's say, Victoria Nuland and some of the neocons, and regardless of how it ends, BlackRock has the deal to rebuild the country. They're going to make billions of dollars gaining these assets, gaining access to these assets. Perhaps if the Russians win, BlackRock won't. But usually what happens is in any of these nation-building exercises, for example, elites make decisions. They're going to go mess with some countries, nation build, etc. These countries get destroyed. Then the investment bankers come in, buy up assets, make money, leverage tax dollars, and gain benefits as they're cleaning up the mess. This happened, all throughout the Middle East. This happened in Eastern Europe. And this is kind of your normal way of doing things. Victoria Nuland, as she is not being very successful in Ukraine, she's largely behind the coup in 2014 that started the civil war, that caused the Russians to get involved, and all the killing and mess. And when this is all said and done, she'll probably be directly or indirectly responsible for the death of, say, like 1 million people. Or you've got, like, the Cheneys, who pushed a lot of the Iraq war stuff and a lot of the war in the Middle East, and Halliburton made billions in government contracts, and, maybe 5, 10, 15 million people died. It's hard to tell. A lot of people died in the wars in the Middle East, depending on what you count. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, open slave markets now, just this whole mess, right, where U.S. intervened and just created a big mess of things. And somehow these people keep getting rich because we invest tax dollars into this nation building, money goes missing, stuff gets blown up, but the defense contractors and the investment bankers, the big Wall Street guys, they always seem to make a lot of money. You could say, let's say the Bidens, everybody knows about their corruption in Ukraine and China, but what they don't know is the Republicans are in on it too. I talk about this in some videos, where it doesn't matter if Mitt Romney's family, probably Lindsey Graham, McCain, John Kerry, Pelosi, all the usual suspects. They've got family. Mitch McConnell's making money from China. I'm sure he's got some involvement in a lot of other things too, his family. So all these guys leverage their political connections to make a lot of money. And now, are they the boogeymen themselves? Are they working for the boogeymen? It's hard to say. We all know that there's a lot going on behind the scenes. The Elon Musk Twitter files reveal that the government has the government invests money into big tech. Big tech spies on the people, which big tech can do because we sign away our rights to them. Government protects big tech so they can't get sued. Big tech then sends the data to big government, sells the data, gives government access to things they wouldn't otherwise have access to. So it's kind of a insider, big vicious circle, kind of like the insider trading in Wall Street, where politicians are going to pass laws. These laws are going to cause certain things to be beneficial, so they invest, their friends invest, make lots of money, The money, some of the money gets kicked back into political campaigns as contributions, political action committees, that kind of stuff. And then the people who end up becoming the regulators at the SEC are the same people who are making money, and it's kind of a good old boy system. So you've got a lot of this kind of back and forth, right? There's a story. I was in the business office of a certain Saudi prince. A friend of mine was selling some stuff, and we were talking to the business manager, and he was talking about this is back during the Obama administration at some point. He was talking about how the prince bought up a power plant in Iraq for pennies on the dollar because it's in ISIS-controlled territory, and then they leveraged their political connections with the Clinton State Department to go send in the Marines, liberate the power plant, and then once the power plant was liberated, they could then sell for 100 times what they paid for it. That's kind of corrupt. I'm sure people died in that exchange, but it doesn't matter because the right people got rich. And it's always the same people getting rich, and it's always us peasants paying the price. The system is what it is. It's a game, and you're either going to be part of the game or you're not. And if you're going to play the game, you play by the rules. You have to basically be their bitch. Most of us are not going to be the billionaires who control everything. And a lot of these guys control stuff behind the scenes. And you can sort of tell who they are because it's going to be all the World Economic Forum guys, the Davos guys, that kind of crowd. And it's not like one party or the other. There's elites in both parties, and they all tend to be roughly on the same page. So this is sort of the world that I've seen some glimpses of, and I'm going to try and get some of my friends to recant stories and get more specific over time, because I think it's probably too much for me to do all in one video. But everybody knows there's two sets of rules. And you either play ball or you get out of the way. And I'm not really a revolutionary. I don't pretend to have the ability to overthrow the system, nor do I really want to, because a lot of times when you overthrow a system, it just ends up being what you get afterwards is going to be even worse. Look at the French Revolution. They had lots of chaos afterwards. That didn't work out so well. Look at Russia when they overthrew the czars. You ended up with communism, and like 100 million people died between Russia and China and all the communism in Asia. That was awful. So there's a certain benefit to having an aristocracy because they want consistency. They want everything to sort of stay how it is. And the drawback is that there's a certain amount of corruption. Look at all the Epstein stuff. He was certainly part of the ruling elites. He got killed. I mean, come on, nobody believes he committed suicide. He got killed because he was going to spill the beans on all the people having sex with underage kids. And he served his purpose, and then when he was done, they tossed him. So this is sort of how the game works, and you can look around and see a lot of examples of it. There was that conductor at the Met who liked to diddle little boys, and or look at the Harvey Weinstein and all the Me Too stuff. I knew a girl who was in a number of commercials, and she told me one day, this is when I was in high school, and she was probably 15 maybe at the time. I was a senior. She was, I think, a sophomore, freshman or sophomore, and she told me that she had sex with some director guy, got her the role, and her parents were okay with it because she was going to make $1 million. So that's kind of weird and creepy, but it's that sometimes if you're in that world, you're in that world, and it's there's some benefits and there's some drawbacks. You just got to decide if it's worth it or not. I don't want to be part of that game, so I pieced out and do my own thing. So this is kind of a starting point. I hope this gives people something to think about. But look at who doesn't have to play by the rules. Look who has an unfair advantage just by being who they are, by leveraging their money and their connections. And it's not that there isn't infighting among the elites, but we're not part of that. We're always the ones paying the price. We're really just tax cattle. And like medieval nobility, they take a cut off of what the peasants produce, and we're kind of bound to our profession. We're wage slaves, and most of our money goes to taxes, inflation, which is the secret tax. The elites don't care about inflation because they've got assets which gain value along with inflation, and so they just borrow against it and do some financial leveraging. And maybe I can get my dad to help me make a video talking about some of that financial stuff. So, Ed, I hope this answers some of your questions, and I'll try and get into more specifics as I think about them. And this will be sort of a starting point. So I hope everybody enjoyed this. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and have a good evening. Everybody take care. Goodbye. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did like it, subscribe to my channel and share it with your friends. You can also check out my website, bobtheorc.com, where you can download a free copy of my dad's book and some other things. Have a nice day. Goodbye.